Dave Birkett here, along with Carlos Monarrez, Shawn Windsor from his car, as always. Guys, we got to look. The Lions introduced Dan Campbell on Thursday, and it's safe to say his introductory press conference took the NFL world, at least, by storm, social media by storm. Quite the talking point, as he was talking about biting kneecaps and chopping people down and some of those really football-y things, right, guys? And yeah, I know, Shawn, I know you got an interesting take on this because I loved it. You know, I dug it. I could see why people respond to him and his leadership and why the Lions fell in love with him, frankly, in an interview. I think a lot of the feedback I got from Lions fans said that. It was even a talk here this morning. But I'm going to start with you, Shawn. You didn't quite see it that way.
Well, no, I never have an interesting take, by the way. I mean, I think among the three of us, Carlos is the only one that does. And by the way, can I just say how what's the right word here? The idea that we have a new regime and all of a sudden the headlines on Carlos's pieces are changing tone a little bit is, let's just say that's not a surprise.
I was waiting for I think he's got to bring Patricia back column running Sunday. But that's for another Zoom. So.
I think, he had a lot of enthusiasm. He's got some charisma. He seems to be himself, which is, I think a lot of what people were relating to yesterday. But I was thinking about this. What he was actually saying, or some of the things he was actually saying, especially about kind of what he wants, the style of football, and the toughness and all that, is exactly what we just heard from the last regime, right? So it's not that it was different. It's just that the tone was different to me. It's how he said it. It's how he said it that was different. And I guess that's the point from the Ford's perspective, right? It's all about how you say what you believe. And can you teach what you believe, and can you communicate what you believe? And they've gone wholesale into this idea with Brad Holmes too. I mean, right? And by the way, real quickly, maybe we can get into this a little bit. The more the Sheila Ford Hamp in particular, and Rod Wood to some degree, have talked over the last month, the more they've revealed about just how much they wanted a disinfectant in Allen Park. It's kind of they've revealed what they've really thought.
Absolutely. Look, Carlos and I were talking about this before you were so kind to pull over on your drive to Perdition or wherever you're going. I don't know. But that's exactly what we said. That, look, to me, and Carlos, I'll give you the next word on this. I think every football coach is saying the same thing by and large, right? They all want tough guys and guys that play hard and guys that play smart and, guys that'll give it their all. And maybe people just, use more colorful language like biting off kneecaps. One person says that. But that's really what it comes down to is, the message and connecting mostly with the players in the locker room and getting them to play for them. I asked Dan yesterday about this, that one, Dan Orlovsky, I'm writing the story on Dan Campbell for Sunday and talking to Dan Orlovsky among some other teammates. He said, I asked these guys, what does leadership mean to you? And he said, part of leadership is the ability to get people to give you their all without asking them to do that. Right. So that way they're doing it of their own volition. He said, Dan Campbell's a guy that can do that. And I think that's where, maybe the personality comes in that Patricia, at least right off the bat, lacked. He didn't connect with guys the way he treated them. He was more of a bully, I guess, rather than, what Dan has been through this and done this. And so his words, they ring a little truer, they carry a little more weight, even though he's saying the exact same thing.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to tell you guys, I'm here in a servant's role. I'm here as a service to you. So whatever you want, I'm going to help you get it. You're right, Shawn. I mean, they have revealed that, that they want to, and it's always the opposite, right? The pendulum, once Campbell crashes and burns in 2 years, it's going to be, you know what? We probably need a disciplinarian, a tough, no nonsense. Dan Campbell was too much of a nice guy and a player's coach. And, people just kind of ran over him. And
offensive mind, Carlos. That's what's coming next. Offensive minded. Some
offensive minded. We'll get Matt Campbell after Dan Campbell. He's right. So
he joked about that. Yes.
Right. But you're right, Shawn. I mean, it's they're revealing that they want the opposite of Patricia, and I've always gotten the sense, let's face it. Sheila Ford was very involved in the Jim Caldwell hire. Her mom was, I think, nominally the owner, but she and her husband were heavily involved behind the scenes and advising, like improving, like, what do you think? And even though Ernie, of course, he kind of ran that thing. And I think they like the Jim Caldwell. They like someone who makes them feel good. And Dan Campbell's the kind of guy he's a football coach. Comes out of Central Casting. You would, right. That was one of the first stuff on Twitter, the comments where he looks like a football coach. And basically he's not a fat guy, because, Bill Belichick and Andy Reid, they look like, Mr. Atlas. So that's how you have to win with the only a buff coach.
Well, Bill Parcells, right?
Yeah. And Parcells and, all these guys and, hell Lombardi. But anyway, that, it makes them feel good. And I think, what, last thing I'll say about this is just that it was entertaining, he was very engaging and charismatic, if nothing else. And the reason that people liked him, the fans and media, some gullible media, is the same reason Sheila liked him. And Chris, I mean, they don't have a secret reason or list or whatever that this is the false secret for who's going to be. It's like, who do we like? Who comes off well? Who feels good to us? This guy does. It was a slam dunk, I'm sure, for them.
Well, look, I think you're right on some level that it is about what makes you feel good, but that would be shortchanging some of what Dan brings to the table. I mean, he does have some of those natural leadership qualities. At the risk of spoiling my story for Sunday, one of the Texas A&M guys had told me that, the reason why they won the Big 12 championship their senior year was because after they lost their last game as a junior, Dan Campbell was the one who stood up. They walked into the locker room and the first thing he said was, "Seniors, we appreciate your service. Juniors, we're getting back to work tomorrow." Like, basically led the offseason charge. Like, that's just his personality. He talked about it yesterday where it sort of, simmers up in him and he feels this need to say something. And so I think, Carlos, you're right on one level that, to me, what it comes down to is this is your first impression. And he said it all day Friday when he was making the media rounds, that he was speaking specifically to the people of Detroit, right? His team, the fans here. That's who he had to connect with. He didn't have to connect with New York. He didn't have to connect with LA, your people out in California, Carlos. He had to connect with the people here, his players, his fans. And I think he did that. And unlike Matt Patricia, and Patricia, look, most people, they have a good introductory press conference, right? Maybe except for Adam Gase. But, I think he's a guy that when he got here those first 3 months, that first impression was not a favorable one. Dan Campbell right now has made a favorable first impression. He has the chance to do that over the next few months before they get to the field. And that's what can carry you a long way. So that way you're not digging out of a hole in the locker room, in the media, with your fan base, with ownership, with everyone else.
I heard a couple of thoughts here real quick. And I hate to take away from what I'm going to write, but it's interesting to big picture a little bit. And I'm curious what you guys think. For so long, so much of this fan base has wanted new ownership. And in a way, I feel like that's exactly what they have right now. And I'm not sure they went out and wanted Dan Campbell necessarily because they made him feel good. I think Sheila Ford Hamp in particular sat down and decided how she wanted to change the perception of this organization. Obviously, you have to win at some point to do that more than anything else. In the meantime, though, think about the words and the phrases we have heard for the last couple of weeks, especially yesterday, even preceding the Holmes press conference. We heard her say that they wanted somebody who was self-aware, right? How many times do we hear her say, you guys are going to like him, meaning the media, because she knows how important that is, because we're sort of a proxy for the fans in some way, right? I heard Dan Campbell say that yesterday about you guys. I've never heard, I was just, I remember this earlier, no, I guess it's last year now. God, it's already 2021. There was the same thing with the Pistons with Troy Weaver talking about the city, but I didn't hear any of the you guys are going to like him, not publicly, right? That was a little bit, I don't want to say unusual, but I thought that was smart, actually. I just this idea of how that I think they are so, Sheila Ford Hamp in particular is so sick and tired of the way the organization is perceived that she sat down almost like a CEO, right? And said, how can we change this? We're not going to be able to win maybe for a little bit. What are other ways we can change this perception? And I think they've been really pretty good about it and pretty smart about doing it because it's working.
Rare good point by you, Shawn. I think you're right. They no, legitimately, like I think you're right, and that's part of right. For years we talked about the Patriot way, or right when Rod Marinelli came, it was they're going to build the Tampa 2, right? They're doing things like Tampa did. Well, now what they've tried to do, what they've said all along going into the search, right, was we want to win our way, the Lions way, or whatever it's going to be called, their One Pride moniker, right? And so that's the step of trying to identify these the traits that they want in both hires. Does it work? Who knows? But I think you're right that's part of it, that they want to change the perception of the organization publicly through the media with the people that they have inside their buildings. And look, I appreciated Dan's, candor, his honesty, his passion yesterday. So to me, that goes a long way towards connecting with people. And again, whether that means they win or not, who knows? The other, point I guess I should make there is really what they did, or what they're in the process of doing, is blowing the whole thing up. And if you think about it, that hasn't happened in 2 decades, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, from Matt Millen, that was the last time. And as big a failure as that was some outside the box thinking. And so I give Bill Ford Jr. credit for doing that. Should have pulled the plug earlier. He wanted to, never happened. But when they finally did, they kept his lieutenant Martin Mayhew around and Tom Lawan, right? Even though they hired a new coach. And then, they fire Jim Schwartz and the front office is still there. And then they blow the front office up mid-season, but then they keep calling. So there's always been this link to the past. And now what they're doing is they're getting rid of that link and they're starting anew.
I just think they wanted to change the tenor inside Allen Park, right? So for folks check in, they show their badge and they walk in, they want a different feeling in that building. And they feel like that's where it starts. And that's why this idea of, these ideas of collaboration, and that nobody's really on the top and all this sort of thing. And maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, to your point. And I think Carlos will probably agree with that. But I do give them credit for literally trying to not just remodel, but rebuild that entire feeling of that piece of property right there that has had this cloud hanging over it for so long. I think that's what's going on as much as anything else right now.
Carlos, I know you got something to say on the structure of the organization from here on out without that chief leader, or maybe it's Spielman, or maybe it's Rod, or whoever it is. So go, let me hear it. Let's let everyone riff on that one for me for a second.
Well, I'm not gonna give away anything from what I'm writing, because I'm not planning to write anything. So that's the secret to these conversations, or it won't be interesting, at least. So anyway, you know what? This is, even though I think Sheila's been the phantom menace in the back pulling the strings, and as you know, Dave, she traveled with her mother to all the meetings and all these. She was on committees and all that, kind of like the Bill Jr. thing for his dad. She's officially the owner, right? Just became the owner in the spring, so or whatever it was, June. So she's kind of a really first time. I don't care what Bill says or Elizabeth or Muff or whatever. I'm the owner. I'm running this thing my way. And you're right, Shawn, that they are kind of in the middle of that. They want a different tone. They want it her way. She wants it her way. And they do want this is my one concern about this, is I think she wants this completely open, kumbaya, total free exchange of ideas. Nobody reports to anybody. They all report to me and Rod. And we're all going to be servants. We're all going to work together for each other. It's not going to be selfish. And no organization that I've ever heard of that has existed on the planet and made money probably has ever worked that way. So that's my one concern, is I don't know if businesses are built to work that way. Any business has people in it, and people have prejudices. They have alliances. Dave, like you talked about with Dan Campbell, with, his friend or whatever. And, he was friends, and then Campbell comes and he's friends with him. And, people just gravitate in different orbits, and there becomes, there's jealousies there. You're just not going to have this completely, let's all be friends. And I think that's obviously the reaction to Patricia and Quinn, who were very top heavy management people. And she also probably remembers Jim Schwartz, who was not popular in the building. He was a top heavy management kind of guy who didn't care about your feelings, So I think that they want to win her way, which is fine. You're the owner. It's how you want it. My big question is, can that work? Hey, if it works, great. That would be awesome, that they have found a way to get everybody aligned and together. And the one thing it kept bothering me when they were talking yesterday, when Campbell was talking yesterday, my last thing I'm saying is just that, he talked about, oh, Brad and I are already on the same page and we're finishing each other's sentences. Didn't they just talk about a general manager and a coach who used to take road trips and the carpet was worn down between their offices. And it's like, bro, like we've been there. Yeah, getting along doesn't guarantee anything. And you're right, the public perception will help, which as
it buys time, if nothing else.
Yeah, and Dave and I know, and I don't know if Shawn knows this as much, but they were not happy in Allen Park when the anti-gay comments from Campbell's past came out, because that was also another thing. The rape charges against Patricia, that was a huge black eye to that organization. They hated it, and the fans turned against them for that, and then all the other stuff, and they came out and chasing away good players. So how long this goodwill lasts, if nothing else comes out from Campbell and people, I don't know. I mean, if he doesn't start trading away Darius Slay, because he's talked about wanting it his way too and the right way, and so that's gonna bear out. But yeah, we're gonna see. The Sheila Ford Hemp, everybody gets a long way. Let
me jump in here for a real quick second, because Carlos just referenced a story that I just want to clear. He said, Campbell and his friend and whatever. We were talking again before I'm being on camera here. This is another just story that I was told as I'm doing my research on Dan Campbell. We were talking about Dan Campbell's ability to connect with everyone in the locker room, white, black, Asian, whatever it is. Dat Win played at Texas A&M and at Dallas with him. He was telling me, he said, him and Dan played together at Texas A&M. They were good buddies. And there was a linebacker, and I forget his name, that played in Dallas with him. And Dat and him were best friends. And then Dan gets there, and Dat was just explaining to me that, Dan's reach is that all of a sudden he gets there, and Dat's best friend all of a sudden becomes best friends with Dan, because he was that magnetic of a personality, and so I think that's, Carlos, part of, what you were saying, I guess, is or part of the whole servant approach, that the Lions are striving for, is if you have the right people in place, maybe it can work, right? Like if you have people that, one thing that Dan said yesterday that I thought was really important was like, air your complaints, like share that negativity, right? Like if you have problems, get it out in the open and don't hide it. I think that's important. And I think if you have people that embrace that, that can be a good thing for the organization. And maybe because there is, like, you're right, Carlos, there are power struggles all the time in all walks of life, right? And especially in the NFL with the types of personalities that we have. And so it's inevitable that there is going to be conflict at times. It's just a matter of how they get through that conflict. And again, I think that's part of, if you have the right people in place to manage that conflict, to get through it, and the Lions hope they do, then you can be successful.
Well, there are, again, a couple quick thoughts, or maybe not so quick. Maybe they're more like Carlos type thoughts. Is getting back to this idea of, Holmes said, a week ago or whenever it was, God, this has all been a blur. Holmes was talking about in his philosophy of the talent separation isn't that big in the NFL. Like if you're in the NFL and on a roster, the differences in ability aren't that great. So what's going to make the difference, right? Motivation, connection, teaching, all that sort of thing. Whether you buy into that or not is fine, but maybe there is a little bit of truth to that. But Carlos, to your point about this story that the Free Press ran about Dan Campbell's comments, I went to the University of Texas, and just for a little bit of quick context. And by the way, I liked his answer yesterday, and I liked that his wife said, "Hey, what have you done?" Right. So he's got somebody in his life who can clearly check him, and I thought that was really interesting. And I think that's a good thing. We all need those kind of folks. But I went to UT, and part of that comment was, and I'm not trying to justify it at all. College, and my brother went to A&M. College Station is a very, very conservative place. It's a small little place. Austin is like the liberal sort of island in Texas, and that's still sort of true today. Maybe not quite the way it was back in the 90s, but so that's what that was part of, right? You're kind of poking at the creative, progressive, the liberals, the commies, whatever. And he's over at this, A&M's an ag school, and it's a military school too, right? So he's trying to have some fun with that, and he went too far with it. And at that bonfire that they used to have, they don't have it anymore because it became, you guys remember that, how awful that tragedy was. But I think that's a little bit of the context of what he was trying to do. He was just trying to play in those tropes between those two schools and that rivalry. And, Austin kind of looks down on College Station. So that's part of it too. It's like Michigan State that way. Again, not to justify it, but that's just giving you a little bit of context.
What are you trying to say about my alma mater, Michigan State here, son?
Nothing. I'm saying that Michigan people, unfortunately, my son goes to Michigan State. And I shouldn't say that, right? Because people already, I get it from both sides, but Michigan folks look down on Michigan State folks.
Slappy, Carlos, didn't you? I knew it.
Michigan State folks, I have family at Michigan too, though. So Michigan State folks, Michigan folks look down on Michigan State folks. It's not right, is it? I mean, well, Carlos looks down on everybody. So
no, I'm comfortable enough in my own skin that it doesn't matter who looks down upon me. It doesn't. I just go do my thing, And
yeah, in any case, I don't know. I know maybe that was part of what they were trying to get out there, but yeah, it's funny. My brother and I were at those two schools back in the 80s, but it was the same as it was in the 90s.
All right, let's circle this back to football. What do you think? To me, the most important. We talked about this, Carlos, the other day, right? The Stafford, obviously, that's the most important decision they have coming, right? And I think it's easy if it's their decision. Maybe if Stafford wants to be traded, then we're talking about a whole different ball of wax. But as I look at the rest of the staff, for them to win on the field, the other thing that they really need to get right to me is offensive coordinator. Yeah, they need the players, but the way, and Shawn, you sort of hit on this earlier, look, Dan was a guy that came up in a different era of football in some ways, right? He was a tight end and he was a gnarly dude who, blocked the hell out of people and tough guy and all this. And, he, to his credit, he said he learned from Sean Payton and he learned about the way the game has evolved, but they need, because so much in the NFL, this game has become so offensive that if they find themselves the right play caller, I think that's, along with this Stafford decision, along with rebuilding the defense, those are the things to me that are ultimately going to determine whether Dan Campbell is successful here in Detroit or not.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Carlos, real quick. I wrote about this the other day. You go back and you look at who's winning. Like, you can get to the playoffs with that model, with that sort of tough guy. We're going to run the ball, try to limit the mistakes, control the ball possession, all that. That does work. It still works. There, half the teams that got in the playoffs this year play that kind of ball, right, or close to it. Cleveland does, Tennessee does, Baltimore does. But if you can't throw the ball and design your offense around throwing the ball, and everything else comes out of that, excuse me, you're not going to win a Super Bowl. Now, I understand Lions fans are like, hey, who cares about a Super Bowl? Let's just get to the playoffs. But but you're right to that point.
No, you're right. Because playoffs, it wasn't good enough for Jim Caldwell. It won't be good enough for Dan Campbell if that's all we're seeing is 9 and 7s, because always you're looking for something more. You're looking to take that next step. And so we'll find out if Dan can lead them there. Carlos?
My big question is, I want Shawn to unzip that hoodie to see if it says Izzone on the bottom of your t-shirt.
No. I don't really care for Michigan State.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Come on. Who are you trying to kid here, Shawn?
What's that?
I said, who are you trying to kid here? Come on.
You know what? Here's the thing. I like every team in the state that do well because it's good for us.
I like when your phone goes out so we can't see anymore. That's fantastic too. All right, back to you, Carlos. Let's hear it.
Somebody was calling in. Sorry.
Yeah.
It was actually Carlos.
Was it Juwan Howard or Tom Izzo? Which one? Lupe, you're late for lunch. You got to go soon.
You guys like the teams that have some success. More people read. It's good for everybody. The state's a little happier. You know?
Absolutely.
No. Yeah, Dave and I know nothing about writing about winning teams, so there's we're kind of limited in that knowledge.
When I retire, it's going to be my book on bad football, because I've covered a lot of it, from the John L. Smith years at Michigan State, Rich Rod years at Michigan, and 0-16 with a stop in between, and somebody keeps calling Shawn, but that's all right. And here lately, we've made
it's Troy Weaver now.
Yeah. No. That was my battery going on. Yeah, no. By the way, Juwan Howard's doing a pretty good job. Not that we want to get off on that topic, but that's why Dave coaches basketball. He needs a taste of winning, right? He wants to be able to experience that himself. He can't just be in Allen Park all the time. And it wears on your soul.
We have practice today. We're playing a tournament in Toledo tomorrow. So yeah, we're getting back to it. We're back at this, and now that this coaching and GM search are behind me, I can get back to the important.
And what kind of leader are you? Are you a bully? Are you a more of you take input from everybody? Where do you stand?
I'm glad that we've circled this conversation back, because you guys know how much I love talking about my basketball team. No, look, I mean, I coach sixth grade girls, right? So you can't really be too much of a bully with some of that stuff. I like to pride myself in teaching the fundamentals and the techniques right now, right? I'm trying to get these girls. My theory on this, Shawn, sorry to bore you, Carlos. Shawn and I are just going to talk some basketball and coaching and all that. I'm trying to get the girls ready to make their next team. That's all I say at this age. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to teach them enough so they make their next team, whatever it is. If they go play somewhere else next year, when they go to high school, whatever team they want to make next, that's my philosophy on coaching the young ladies that I coach. Now it looks like we might have lost them, Carlos. So,
to everybody at home, I'll boil down Dave's coaching. Is he installed a little hill in the back of his gym. He makes them run laps when they drop passes. And he tells them they're not as good as other players that they might be talking to as friends because they're only trying to get stuff out of them. So
we try to make it competitive.
Yeah.
No. I think that's great. God,
all right, football. Let's get back to football. Let's end this on a football note because we're almost out of time here. And we know Dan Campbell loves his football. We saw that yesterday, the passion that he spoke with. Again, it's still been a topic of today. So, Carlos, talk some football. Let's hear it.
What were we talking about? What was the thing we were saying about Campbell?
We were talking about how you don't believe any of this.
Let me ask you this, Carlos. They've said very obviously glowing things about Matthew Stafford. And I know these conversations always come back to Matthew in some way, right? They've said nothing but great things. I mean, you listen to what Campbell said yesterday, right? He's a leader. He's a guy you can win with. He's, whatever. He called him a stud, right? A couple times. Is Matthew Stafford the quarterback of this team in 2021?
I think so because, the draft, the draft is a problem because they got 5 picks, right? And they got a lot to do with this roster. So you don't want to create a problem for yourself when you already have a quarterback. It's so hard to get a quarterback. So like Stafford, as Stafford's part-time agent over here likes to say all the time, he's good enough to play another 8-9 years, whatever you say. So they think there's two things. There's 2 things at play. One, he's great because you're never going to say anything bad about him because he's on your team. You may have to play with him. And if you want to trade him, you're not going to say that the 78 Pinto has rust under it. It's fine. It can go another 100,000 miles. So you don't want to reduce his trade value. But I think that if I'm the Lions, if I'm Brad Holmes and I'm Dan Campbell, I want to hold on to Stafford. There's too many names. To Stafford, Matt, because he gives you options for this year. You don't have to make that decision. Now, if someone comes out of somewhere, if Dak Prescott has a setback and Jerry Jones wants to give you 2 number 1 picks for Stafford and another whatever, some crazy deal. Yeah, I think they look hard at it. I think they take that deal probably, but nobody's going to do that. Everybody kind of knows. Listen, if Stafford was going to win, he would have won in his first 12 years. We can hear all the stuff we want about Stafford here, but in the NFL, he's perceived as, yeah, he's good, but he hasn't won. Why hasn't he won? There's a lot of reasons, but he hasn't won. And you pay quarterbacks to win. He may be a trade option during the season, maybe if there's an injury, but I don't think going into the offseason. I think starting, whatever, week 1, I think he's your quarterback.
Shawn, if you have something to chime in on Stafford, let's hear it. But other than that, I'm going to give you the last word on Patricia because our meeting time is counting down here on our
Patricia.
Did I say Patricia on Dan Campbell? And on see, you confused me with all your Matts. What do you got on Stafford, Shawn? And then, again, because Carlos did, I don't think you ever answered the question. I like the press conference. I like how he did yesterday. Did you come away liking what you heard from Dan Campbell yesterday? Did you feel good about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think he, it's all, like you said, it's a different flavor of the same thing, but I liked it. I liked his enthusiasm. I think he's going to be interesting. I think he's going to get people to move beyond Patricia, all the Patricia hate. And I think Holmes will do that too a little bit for Quinn. I think Holmes comes off as he has good stories. He's well-spoken, so I think both of them, especially Campbell, if he keeps this up, this kind of level of enthusiasm, I think people like it, until he starts 0-7, people will start hating him then and stupid coach and you do is just usually go lift weights more. Why don't you figure it out? They'll turn on him like they turn on everybody. But Yeah, I liked it. It was fun. It was entertaining. You know, who knows? Nobody knows if it's going to work.
Shawn, you get the last word here on Dan Campbell.
Is Dan Campbell well spoken to, Carlos? You going to use that for him?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, I'll say this quick thing is
the dude.
I once saw Greg Williams talk. I told Dave this story a couple days ago about I was in New Orleans before the Lions played in the playoffs, and I was there, and they bring out Sean Payton, and they bring out the OC, and there was, you know, blah, 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 media center, jaded reporters. Greg Williams is coming out. Oh, everybody got excited. I'm like, what's going on? Greg Williams killed. He was such a great, entertaining guy. Dan Campbell is the most entertaining interview as a coach that I've seen since Greg Williams. I mean, he's just, he's well-spoken in a plain-spoken way. He connects. He doesn't try to get too fancy. He doesn't go on too long. This is what I'm saying, man. He killed the interview. I'm sure Sheila Ford Hamp was probably like, we got to go. And Chris Spielman was probably like on a chain and with a leash, you know, like, I got to go hire this guy right now. And, you know, you can't call him yet. That'll be tampering. No, I want to do it, you know? And so, yeah, I mean, he went
on long, but we loved it. We loved it yesterday. We'll take things like that.
He went on long, but he didn't, I mean, like the one thing with Patricia is he kind of droned on. He went really long. Even Caldwell sometimes would go on a little too long on some points. Campbell was going on, but he wasn't boring when
the conversational long. Yeah, no, you're right. I didn't mean that in a bad way. I just, you know, but that 20-minute intro, it was great. It was great. Everyone was going to type in except Shawn. That's why after Carlos finishes his sentence, Shawn, you got last word before we
I was going to type in the chat, like, I bet we're going to say like no more questions, or we only got room for one or two questions, because Sheila and Rod had gone on for a while, and then he came in with the 20-minute intro. So, but more is more, right, Dave?
For us, absolutely, especially if you're being honest and colorful. We love that. Shawn, last word.
Well, I thought, well, first of all, it was a lot of fun. Look, he seems authentic, right? He seems somebody that doesn't have any airs about him. And I'm not making any kind of judgments, just this idea if he looks like a football coach or not. I think that's kind of silly in some ways, but I think that's what people tapped into. And getting back to this idea, one of the the most important themes for Sheila Ford Hamp, you could tell, was this idea of self-awareness. Understand people beyond your little 2 feet of space on this planet. And he does that. And not just, I mean, obviously reaching out to the media, which is maybe not, again, unusual, but it's interesting and it's smart. But way more important than that is reaching out to this fan base and to this city and having some sense of that and having the sense to speak to that and say that. No, the coaches don't have to do that. I mean, you can say, yeah, I want to win. You know, we need to win and we're going to make this city proud, whatever. He went way beyond that. And I just thought that was really smart. And not that he was trying to do that as an agenda necessarily. That's just who he is and it's what he cares about. And I think that'll help. And I think if that's how he's going to coach in the locker room, he'll have a chance to be successful as long as they can get a little bit more talent, despite what Brad Holmes is talking about and all the talent being equal. There are some spots where, you know, you got to be able to get to the quarterback. You got to be able to stay with the receiver on the outside, those kinds of things. They get a little bit of that. He's going to have a chance to succeed, right? I really believe that.
We'll leave it there. Here on January 22nd, I think there's lots of good vibes going on about the Lions right now. And we'll see, 8, 9, 10 months from now if those remain. But that'll do it for us. For Carlos Monarrez, Shawn Windsor, I'm Dave Birkett, Freak.com.